Imagine you're about to buy your first watch and you know absolutely nothing about watches. All the information you have is that some are mechanical and some are quartz, and you decide, I want to buy a mechanical watch. And that's it. That's all you know. You don't know which country is supposed to have the best watches. You don't know any of the brands. You don't know which movements are better than others. All you know is the information, say, a salesperson could tell you. And they put 5 watches in front of you and explain to you each one what the positives are and what the negatives are. Which one would you buy? What would it come down to? Would it be all about appearance? Would the materials they mentioned make a difference? Would the power reserve be a big consideration? Would the smoothness of the sweep be a big consideration? Would the complications matter? What would matter most to you? Well, when I think about that, I think sometimes knowing everything is knowing too much, and that's why there's so much buyer's remorse in the watch industry. That's why. It's because we find a watch we absolutely love, but then we immediately look for something lacking within it. There's the no perfect watch theory. That isn't necessarily true. I don't believe that. But what we end up saying to ourselves is, oh, that's a great watch, and that's not a bad price, and that's within my budget, but, and the but could be any number of things. But if you knew nothing, this might actually be the watch you end up purchasing. And this is a watch I purchased recently. If you watch my previous video on my trip to Bangkok to go watch shopping, this is a watch I bought. It's the Wise Adamascus AD791. And there's a number of reasons why I purchased this watch. And of course, I'm a very educated watch enthusiast, so what's inside the watch makes a difference to me. But I think if I knew nothing, this might still be the watch I would have bought. Before we get into the Wise AD791, let's talk a little bit about something I won't do on this channel, and that's wrist checks. It's never gonna happen. I'm never gonna do that to start a video off. Videos about watches will be about the watch I'm actually talking about, but if you can guess which watch is my hand, if you can identify it, go ahead and throw it in the comments. Let me see if you get it right. Now, getting back to the Wise AD791, there's a lot to like about this watch. And as a watch enthusiast, there are certain things about it that stand out to me and will stand out to other enthusiasts, like the 4 Hertz movement, right? It's got a high beat movement. This is a Miyota 9000 series. So it beats at 28,800 beats per minute. You get that very smooth sweep from it. Now, it's not a 36,000 sweep or a precisionist sweep, which is of course quartz, but it's a nice sweep. It's one that someone with like my eyesight can notice, okay? Now, as I get older, I don't notice it as much. When it's on my wrist, honestly, I couldn't tell you the difference between a 3 Hertz or 4 Hertz movement. Just looking at my watch on my wrist, I kind of have to really look up close and pay attention to the sweep of the hand to actually see the difference. So that's one of the features that an enthusiast may look for that someone who knows nothing about watches would never notice. I don't think a 3 Hertz or 4 Hertz sweep matters to 90% of the people out there that have a wristwatch that's mechanical. I really don't think it matters. So that's something that an enthusiast would take advantage of that the average watch buyer wouldn't. But I want to begin there. Another thing about this watch is that, of course, it's got the exhibition case back with a decorated rotor. It's a nicely decorated rotor. Even the Miyota movement is not all that fancy, but it's not absolutely base. So that's something that an enthusiast can appreciate, but the average person can appreciate as well. I think exhibition case backs are something that appeals to the average consumer, to the Joe Blow who knows maybe nothing. And then something else that really stands out on this particular watch that you wouldn't take notice of if you were an enthusiast is, of course, the branding, the information on the face. So you get to know that it's a Wise Adamascus. That means nothing to most people. It's automatic, which is, what our buyer wants. It's got 100 meters of water resistance, which is appealing to the majority of people. The idea that, well, if it gets wet, it won't be ruined. That stands out. To add to that, it's got a screw-down crown. That again is something that would appeal to the average buyer, not just watch enthusiasts alone. If a salesperson says to someone who's nothing, by the way, the crown screws in tight so that water can't get in, it creates a tight seal. That's a selling point. The loom, which is obvious on these applied indices, okay? It's very obvious that they're loom filled. When that's mentioned to your average customer, that come nighttime, they'll still be able to read the time because of the loom-filled indices, that will stand out. And of course, the polishing is really key to attracting a buyer when it comes to this particular watch. And that's because most people equivalate polished surfaces with premium luxury, right? The more polished it is, the more luxurious it is. So this is something that would stand out to a majority of buyers, whether you're an enthusiast or not. Enthusiasts may actually be turned off by a high polish, actually, because they may look at it like, oh, this could be a scratch magnet. And I want to wear it quite often, so I don't want to have to deal with the scratches that are going to happen because of all the polished surfaces. But to the average buyer, that stands out. The polished indices stand out. As an enthusiast, I can appreciate the fact that it has an enamel dial because a lot of watches don't, right? That's a special feature. To the average Joe Blow off the street, enamel might not mean anything, but the fact that you have this matte contrast enamel dial behind these high polished hands and indices with a high polished case, the contrast really makes it pop. So that's going to appeal. Lastly, but probably most importantly of all, is the price. If you were to put this watch along 5 other watches, and you could say have 2 watches that are less expensive and 2 watches that are more expensive. When you see the price of this watch, which online is like $650 American, but they have a coupon for, I think, $50 American off right now. You compare that to another watch that has, say, 904L stainless steel like this watch does with a high polished surface. You're looking at watches like Ball or Rolex, certain Omegas that have the 904L stainless steel. You're spending a lot more money for those watches. So when a salesperson says, well, the case is made from 904L stainless steel, and so is this watch, and so is this watch, and this is the least expensive of the 3, that makes it more appealing as far as your pocketbook's concerned. When you don't care where a watch is made, that doesn't make a difference. But here, as an enthusiast, it might, right? A lot of people buy into the marketing and they tell you Swiss made is #1, and that's the general consensus amongst the community. So when you see a watch is Swiss made, say in a higher bracket, versus a watch made in Thailand, like this is, then immediately you might be swayed into thinking, well, the Swiss made watch is better. Regardless of the movement in it. It's better, it's Swiss made. But if you know nothing, then all you're looking at is the quality of the polish, the quality of the construction, the smoothness of the sweep, the alignment of everything in place. And when that's all that's considered, this really stands out. So, all said and done, when you factor all these different things in, a watch like this becomes extremely appealing to the average person. But the more educated you are, the more likely you are to try and talk yourself out of it. Which one of those consumers are you? And have you talked yourself out of a watch you wish you purchased? And have you bought watches based entirely on specs that you had wished, man, I should have bought something else I just truly loved? Let us know in the comments.